Good morning and welcome to our webinar this morning on developing a COVID-19 recovery plan for your business. Three-step approach that we believe is critical to really developing a recovery plan and getting your business back on track. And whether that's looking at strengths and opportunities that have come your way, but also looking at the risks that your business is facing and amending your business strategies accordingly. So let's kick off then. If we were to then look at your, just from an overview standpoint, the relaxation of the COVID-19 protocols, I mean, it's good news for business. But what's your plan now? And a lot of businesses have been sort of left wondering, left with this question in mind. And that is largely due to the endless updates in terms of lockdown regulations. Essentially, it's a constant moving goalpost in terms of what is allowed and what is not allowed. What are your compliance requirements? Both for your business in terms of on-premise, both in terms of dealing with customers. How is it going to be affecting your supply chain? How is it going to be affecting your employees? How are you going to be able to make use of specific, UIF benefits and the government protocols and mechanisms that they've put in place for that? But in so doing, in meeting all of these challenges, it does require ongoing capital and funding requirements. So to this extent, we feel that it was really necessary to just stop and take stock of what are the challenges that that businesses are going to be facing, and how are they really going to approach this sort of recovery phase. If we were to look at it just from an overview standpoint, studies have proven that anxiety short-circuits the decision-making process. So the first step really is to take a deep breath and just remain calm. Because at a time like this, it's really hard to see the wood from the trees. And at this time, and when businesses start to panic and when decision makers and stakeholders start to panic, that's when the wrong decisions get made and your business is put on the wrong path. Sometimes it's only thinking in the short term without looking at additional risk factors that your business might be facing. It's maybe looking at the business problems or the issues in isolation. And that is because you're not necessarily used to looking at your business from a holistic risk management perspective. So the time right now is to really remain calm, as calm as possible, and shift your mindset from a reactive to proactive. With that in mind, I mean, a lot of hard work has actually already been done in terms of implementing hibernation strategies, and that has been done for many businesses. But now is the time to really reassess your position with a view to developing your recovery plan and positioning yourself and your business as best you can. If your business model is fundamentally strong and likely to be viable in the longer term, you would be looking at strategies to position and improve your business for when normal returns, or whatever normal looks like for your specific industry and business. I know that the term normal is relative right now. So you have to constantly take stock of the changes in your industry. And when I went back to when I mentioned in the beginning in terms of the constant changing in regulations that's affecting different industries, it's up to business to be able to keep abreast of those constant changes. Whether you may agree or disagree with them, that's up for debate and discussion. But in terms of the regulations that you need to comply with, you need to be aware of what those are. And you need to have specific individuals in your business that's looking at that. Because your business plan, essentially, or your recovery plan, needs to be quite agile and change accordingly. If, however, you have concerns about ongoing viability, it is critical to reach out to your advisors as early as possible. I mean, we can work to limit your losses, to review your risk and your asset protection strategies, as well as your business interruption policies in that regard, and we generally be able to provide you with your support to recovery. Your recovery plan should be achievable and comprehensive. It should include input from various specialists or various members of the business. And that's because there's various aspects that really impacts this. A lot of times businesses are looking at this purely from a cash perspective, and yes, that is the ultimate sort of short-term goal in terms of conserving your cash resources. And the way that you go about doing that, we'll talk about later. But ultimately, this is really managing, it's a risk management exercise for your business to really assess the viability of your business. And in so doing, you're going to then have to develop this recovery plan. And that's why you're going to have input from multiple stakeholders in your business, from multiple key advisors. And that's looking at it from tax, from legal, from your risk management specialists, from a financial and operational risk standpoint. Because if you were to look at it in isolation, you're going to miss key areas that is going to impact the short and medium to long-term viability of your business. So, I mean, for you, success may mean making it through the next few months with your business intact, or it may mean leveraging an opportunity to acquire struggling competitors or merging with like-minded businesses. We've actually seen quite sort of an uptake from a mergers and acquisition standpoint, and that's whether you're looking at it from a horizontal or vertical integration in terms of business combinations. But that's really looking at it in order to make the business viable, and that is one of the strategies that you are going to have to consider in terms of the viability assessment of your business. And we'll look at the last sort of resolution, last resort, and that's really just winding up. So I mean, it's a difficult decision, but at the time may come where the decision is, do you either trade or do you wind down? And we'll talk about what those considerations are a bit later on. So what is the three-step approach that we would suggest? Simply put, it's breaking it down. It's assess and review your situation. You can't plan for something that you don't know, you don't fully understand. And it's really, this is the first phase where the real groundwork and your homework is really done on your business in terms of really understanding the risk factors that is affecting your business, in terms of understanding your cash flow constraints, and what is your critical suppliers, what are your critical customers, in looking at your critical employee resources. All of these factors come into play when you really need to assess and review your situation. And you need to do this first before you develop a recovery plan. And I mean, it stands to reason because when you assess and review your situation, you are looking at your business in terms of, well, if I want to really assess the viability of I want it to be viable in the short, medium to long term, I need to be able to achieve actions 1, 2, and 3. And developing actions 1, 2, and 3 is going to come in terms of your development of your recovery plan. But unless you know what your constraints are and what your challenges are, as well as the opportunities that present itself, you are never going to be able to develop a robust recovery plan, as well as an agile recovery plan. So when we look at the assessment and the review of your situation, you need to look at it in various stages. And that is, as I mentioned, in your short term, you need to relook at your business model and your revenue model. Is it is it strong from a long-term resilience standpoint? Is it sustainable? Or what changes actually needs to be made to your revenue model? Does your revenue model now need to change? A lot of businesses are changing their business strategy in terms of the way they work. And together with this change of business strategy, it's going to also come changes in revenue models. And that's going to affect the sustainability of your business. So you need to be able to pressure test and stress test these particular models to be able to ascertain the long-term viability of your business, as well as the sustainability and longevity thereof. From a short-term aspect, there are various things that you could look at in terms of, what are the government support measures in place? Is there sort of an impact circuit breaker? That's, short-term short-term needs that they might just be funding temporarily. What are your short-term liquidity needs? What are the credit facilities that you can actually access? What do you have access to? And can you engage with your lenders maybe in the short term and in the medium to long term? And then when you push it down into the medium to long term, you're then looking at further government incentives. At the moment, that is it's a constant change that is currently taking place, especially in South Africa, and we have a team that's constantly keeping abreast with these particular changes, particularly from a labor standpoint and a tax standpoint. We have specialists that actually that are assisting clients in dealing with their UIF, their TERS claims, etc., in order to assist with the short-term liquidity needs, as well as their payroll needs as well. So when we're looking at assessing and reviewing your situation, you need to be able to ask certain questions. And these questions are, what is my financial position, and how is performance likely to change as these COVID-19 restrictions relax? Or is there going to be another wave? So you need to be able to take cognizance of both situations. And your scenario planning needs to be able to be agile enough to address both scenarios. We have cash flow experts, and you might have them too, that needs to be able to help you determine how to limit those losses whilst cutting costs and seeking to boost your cash reserves. Another aspect that you need to be able to look at is what other stimulus and support measures are available, and how can you apply for them? Can your business apply for them? Are you eligible? What are the considerations that you need to be able to that you need to consider? And there are a lot of permutations involved. So that's why it's very difficult sometimes for businesses especially maybe when you're looking at medium-sized enterprises, and also on the large size as well, for them to really work themselves through all the different permutations. And it's really critical really to seek advice in that standpoint, to really see are you eligible? If you don't understand it, really rather seek advice in order to be able to get the right advice to see whether you are eligible or not, and how you can actually then apply for those particular support measures. From an RSM standpoint, I mean, we understand which measures businesses in various industries that you're eligible for, and how you can actually apply for them. And we actually update our resources as soon as new initiatives are announced. And you can also find regular updates on our COVID Resource Center via our website. The other area you need to look at is what and where are the risks to your business. So this is really critical in terms of really seeing, well, what are the different warning signs? So yes, it may not be affecting your business right now, but it is a risk. And that means that it can actually materialize in the future. It can materialize in the short to the medium term. So you need to be able to plan accordingly for those risks. If you don't ask yourselves a question and really are honest enough with yourselves to be able to really sit down and say, these are the risks to my business, both in the short term and short, medium, and long term, you're not going to be able to plan a recovery, plan an agile recovery plan. So your viability assessment, really, when you're doing it, is really going to be skewed, and it's not going to give you the full picture. From a recovery and a restructuring and a risk advisory team aspect, we actually have a full team, and I'll go into our sort of solution right at the end. The other aspect that we look at is, and we think is critical for you to look at for your business, is business interruption protection. Many businesses do have it, not necessarily to the extent that they may. They're also not aware of the various clauses in their business interruption policies and how they can actually go about in terms of maybe seeking claims. And we have specialists in this particular area, but you need to really be able to review these policies critically, and engage with your insurers or with certain advisors to be able to assist you in making those claims, or and making a case for you in terms of those claims. There are insurance companies are, as you can imagine, inundated right now with COVID-19 business interruption claims. You can imagine that there is going to be a large number which is turned down, but that does not mean that you should not be reviewing them to be able to assess, well, can you submit one for your business itself? Is there a high probability or likelihood that you could make a claim? If you don't ask, you don't get. So you need to be able to really be honest and take this opportunity to really critically analyze the key areas and resources that are available for your business. The other area is, has your business have you looked at your competitive and your operating environment? Has that changed? You need to be able to look at your critical customers, look at your critical suppliers. Your supply chain may have changed. The way your suppliers operate would have changed. The way your customers operate would have changed. If you were to look at what your competitors are doing, have they actually changed their business models? What have they done that's allowing them to be more viable and generate revenue in the short, medium to long term? And why have you not done the same thing if you're operating in the same environment? Are there certain technologies and digitization platforms that you need to be making use of? You would have seen maybe on LinkedIn, various other social media platforms, but also in the media, and with some of your suppliers or your critical customers, that a lot of them in this time period have actually switched to digitization platforms. With that does come its own risks, but they're doing it to be able to make their business more agile. And that is looking at business-to-business portals, business-to-customer portals. It's trying to limit maybe physical interaction, and whilst at the same time keeping efficiencies, increasing productivity. And that does come with really assessing, can your business achieve the same efficiencies or maybe even more with digitization by changing your business models and changing your operating environment. Because your competitive environment, make no mistake, will have changed, because no business should really be just looking at it, I'm just going to continue doing the same thing that I've always done. If you don't see that a change is necessary, then the viability of your business is going to be impacted. Maybe not in the short term, but it's certainly going to be impacted in the medium to long term. The other area that you need to look at is you need to look at areas of sort of navigate the business through. You currently in a survival mode, so that's what you're trying to navigate your business through. Look at certain market opportunities. Never waste a good crisis. Sounds a bit bad to say that, but with every crisis, there does come opportunities. So you need to be able to sit back and also assess and identify what are those market opportunities that is presenting itself, and can you actually leverage what those market opportunities are. We'll go a bit further on the next slide into the cash flow analysis, working capital management, and assessing your financial position. But really, that is critical in terms of assessing what your current situation is. So in terms from a cash flow standpoint, you're looking at the 4 C's. So what are those 4 C's? It's cash, costs, credit, and confidence. Now, priority 1, you need to be able to conserve cash and reduce costs. And that is going to come in a number of ways. You need to be able to assess what are your various options from a cash resource standpoint. And do you have access to certain credit facilities? You need to be able to critically analyze your working capital and your funding needs. Do you have access to it from an equity standpoint? Do you have access to it from a credit standpoint? As can you engage with lenders to be able to renegotiate certain terms of your credit facilities, to be able to increase your cash resources in the short term as well as to the medium and long term? And then the other aspect is reducing costs. Now, reducing costs, a lot of times, business will just go into the immediate thing. Obviously, is retrenchments, adjustments to obviously headcount, etc. But it's worth taking a step back and looking at, once again, the operating environment of your business. Remember, if you want your business to be viable, you want it to be successful at the tail end of this, and that means that you're going to need to change your operating environment, and that includes your human capital that you're going to need to address those particular new business strategies as well as the objectives in your new operating environment. And when you change your business process, when you change your business strategies and your operating environment, that's what you need to really critically analyze. And when you review that and you assess, you identify, where can I actually pick up efficiencies? What can I reduce? What can I let go of? That's where you're going to really see where a reduction in your costs, but an efficient really reduction in your costs, where you can still maintain efficiencies and productivities by changing the way that your business operates. Instead of just purely, cutting costs just on the face of it. You need to be able to rationalize and still align it with achieving your business objectives. And then, as I said, assessing certain credit facilities and building confidence. This is critical in this stage to really deal with and engage with your critical customers as well as your critical and key suppliers that's in your supply chain. They may have made changes in their business strategies that you can actually learn from, that you can then adopt in your own business. The other area that you're going to be able to look at is, how can we then maintain those relationships with our customers and our suppliers then going forward? Because you don't want to lose something with you that's then going to impact your bottom line and reducing costs. So cash flows for the next 12 months, and that looking at your GP margins and it's really assessing your company in terms of break even, and that's with and without government support, and goes back to really identifying what government support are you eligible for and what are you not eligible for. How long is it going to take you to receive that particular government financial support? As well as then your credit facilities that's available, and then going into sensitivity analyses. What happens if your revenue drops? And that's where those various risk factors and what if scenarios comes into play. It's no point in sort of closing your eyes or blocking your ears and saying, I'm pretty sure, I've been in business for a really long time, I know that these are the aspects that's going to impact my business. You really need to be honest with yourself and plan for almost all of the sort of risk scenarios that's really going to impact your business. And that's going to range from a low to medium high risk, but that's going to then impact your probability and your sensitivity analysis. When you're building confidence, what we say is you need to be able to when we do it with certain clients, we facilitate and we ask the questions. And that's because you have an independent person that's really challenging you on your business, that's challenging you on the questions that you're asking to your business. What's viable? What's not viable? In terms of, and not rushing into providing solutions. Because as soon as you start rushing into it, it means that you're not fully considering all the various impacts that your revenue models is going to be impacted by. And then focusing on improving your cash flows and reducing that break-even point. So step 2, developing your recovery plan. Do you plan to hibernate or innovate? Is your business likely to be viable, or is it vulnerable and potentially at risk? And how do you identify if it is or when it is? And are you missing certain key opportunities in this particular time that you can actually excel at? A lot of times, as I said, it's difficult to kind of see sometimes opportunities when you're presented with a crisis like this. But that's when an objective opinion, an objective look at your business does actually help, because then you can really see, well, what is the industry looking at? What are the different opportunities that your industry is actually being faced with? Because chances are you're not the only one. So you can actually then leverage those particular opportunities. Risk is not just weakness. Risk also comes with opportunities. So these are the types of questions that you may be contemplating in developing your recovery plan. It should be a roadmap to see you through any potential bumps along the way. And in the beginning, I said, it should be agile. And that's what I mean. It's a working recovery plan. It needs to be agile to be able to change for various changes in scenarios. And that's why, once again, you need to be honest about the risk factors that affect your business. Look at conducting a health check, assess the business viability and the turnaround strategies. This is really sort of the ultimate fork in the road consideration, and it can be confronting when we come across when it comes to sort of a viability assessment, but advisors like us, we're here to be able to help and also guide you through these particular options. In terms of viability assessments. And one of the hard factors to really look at when you're looking at a viability assessments is insolvency risk. It's obviously not something that people like to talk about, but it is a risk that you need to be able to critically assess and be honest about when you're looking at your viability assessment. And then going into the evolution of that recovery plan. And that means that recovery plan needs to be agile. It needs to be working. It needs to be constantly changed depending on the needs of the business. So what do you look at in terms of a viability assessment? We really broke it down into sort of 4 stages. You can be, you've got a growth company, it could be a stagnant company, or we then go into maybe a not viable, and that's, your company is wounded, you're unable to meet certain debt obligations, when they're due, your profitability in your cash generating business, might, but you're not sufficient enough to regularize the debt repayment obligations that you have. Especially if you're highly leveraged from a debt standpoint. And then last but not least, then you're looking at winding down your company with characteristics like you are once again unable to meet your debt obligations when they're due, and then you've got significant debts, and you've assessed your business is not viable with substantial and continuous losses with no prospect. And this actually also looks at pre-lockdown. So you may have actually been hitting this point prior to lockdown, and at the time of the lockdown, it really just catapulted you into this particular stage. It does not mean that there's no recovery from that, but it does mean that it does require critical analysis and assessment thereof. So, and the very last stage is then, do you continue trading, or do you wind up? And this is a difficult and emotional decision. But to come to this conclusion, you need to go through the first 2 steps. You really need to do your homework. Well-advised planning is critical. You cannot be expected to be aware of everything, and that's why seeking professional advice in this juncture is actually critical sometimes to the viability and sustainability of your business. Identifying opportunities, and then know what are the different restructuring options that are available to you. How can you reposition your business depending on what your competitive, how your competitive landscape has actually changed. And then answering the difficult question of solvency. And this includes looking at risk factors and warning signs. Once again, it might not be happening right now. It may not have materialized, but it may materialize in the future. It's a risk. It can actually happen. You need to be able to assess what is the likelihood and probability of those risks materializing. So I just want to then end on our business resilience advisory program in terms of the solution really that we've put together for clients to sort of assist them in this journey. And it's looking at sort of a 5-phase approach when we look at our advisory program. Business and company viability assessment. So it's an independent assessment of the viability of your company and your business. We're able to perform the break-even analysis for you from a cash flow and a profit standpoint. Where is your company in relation to its break-even point? You first need to know your break-even point before you can be able to assess where your company is in terms of that. And a lot of times, clients do not necessarily have the in-house skill to be able to perform these break-even analyses. Especially from a critical standpoint and an independent standpoint, because there's one thing you don't want to have affect you, and that's bias. The other aspect then is, achieving a lower break-even point, and that's coming with various scenario planning, and what if analyses. Be able to brainstorm certain ways and solutions for your business in terms of achieving a particular lower break-even point. How can you achieve the same objective, but maybe do it a little bit differently? Because we constantly look at business process mapping and business process re-engineering, and that is something that you really need to look at when you're looking at your business. And then developing a recovery plan and action plans for them, and constantly monitoring those action plans for them as well. And then the last part then is implementation and the ongoing review of that, and that's really the execution of that action plan. And the ongoing review. It doesn't help if you only develop a plan, but there's no monitoring against it. There's no actions actually being implemented and taken against it. So it's really critical then that there's adequate and continuous monitoring of that particular plan. So I'd just like to conclude and say that this is an unprecedented time for business, but what we can see is that the worst is really yet to come. I think we're only really starting to see the impacts on business and from an industry standpoint. This is not going to be a V-shaped recovery. It's not just going to be going down and then picking right back up again. You are going to need to make changes to your business to be able to ensure that your business is viable in the short term as well as medium to long term, and you come up successful at the tail end of this. Assess short-term measures by government. Seek professional advice, because there's no cookie-cutter approach for this. Each business is different. How it operates in an industry may be different, and the various permutations that's involved is going to impact your business differently. So you need to be able to have a customized a recovery plan and a customized approach to developing that recovery plan. And take a long, hard, strong look at your business and your revenue models. Is it still sustainable? How strong is it from a financial and business resilience standpoint in terms of a long-term sustainability? And sometimes it's hard to look at this objectively. And that is really where an independent assessment does actually help, because we're able to challenge you on what you think your business is and your revenue model is, and how sustainable those revenue models are given the current crisis. And that you're not necessarily living in hope, but you're living in hope with actions that can actually be taken place. We have a full team in this particular in our business resilience advisory program, and that goes across all of our service lines, going to legal, our commercial department, looking at our risk advisory department, as well as our tax and labor departments. And it's a team of experts that is constantly kept up to breast with changes and solutions to be able to assist your business. So feel free to reach out to us at any point and get in contact with us to see, just if it's for a chat, to see how, if we can assist your business, we would gladly be able to do so. So thank you for your time. Look forward to chatting soon.